Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we're doing a full face of nothing new. I'm going to dive back into some older favorites that I maybe have forgotten about a little bit, or at least they deserve a little bit more love. So real quick before we get started, I want to thank you so much for clicking on my video. My name is Cecile, I'm 28 years old, I live in the Netherlands and I try to upload 2 to 3 times a week with makeup related content. I cover every kind of makeup from luxury to drugstore, but I do have a soft spot for luxury makeup. I like to do colorful makeup, I like to use my older makeup and finish it up, but I also like to experiment with some new stuff every now and then. So if that sounds interesting to you, then please consider subscribing. So I've been boring you to death with my Glamlight icing primer, but I did have another favorite until I bought the Glamlight one, which was the Anastasia. This was actually my most used and most loved primer for a long time. I liked it because it set down completely, and I guess that's not really my preference anymore, so maybe that's why I stopped using it. But I do remember it being a fine primer, so we're just going to use this. Because it set down completely, shadows do blend on top of this primer very easily. I just find that with a more sticky primer, the shadows are a lot more opaque. And I guess I've been preferring that. Alright, let's get into some eyeshadows. I picked out my Nabla Dreamy 2 palette because this has been on my list ever since I bought it last summer to use in a video on YouTube. And at some point I already used it so much that I couldn't do a first impressions anymore or a review because it's an older palette. So I guess I never used it on camera, but it's really pretty. For some reason these combinations of blue tones and red and gold tones work really well. So I thought we could use it today. It's not terribly old in my collection, but it is an older product in general. So I'm taking a tapered blending brush and I'm going into the shade New Past, which is this reddish tone. Shall I zoom you in a little bit for this? This is actually the only Nabla product that I own. And I'm really excited to try some more of this brand. I figured if they release something new that I'm interested in, then the chances are pretty high that I'll pick it up. The shades blend out beautifully, the color stories are interesting, the shimmers are nice and shimmery. It does everything right. And it's not too expensive, it's okay. This is just one shade and it blends out beautifully. I just realized I won't be able to use my Anastasia Brow Freeze for today's video because I use it every time. So it's not exactly a neglected older favorite. Last night I also used my Dior Pump and Brow again, and I don't know if it was more dried out or if I just don't prefer the look anymore, but I really didn't like my brows very much. Okay. I always need to touch up a little bit here because my eyes are so uneven. And I'm just going to take this underneath the lower lash line as well. Well, I think that's a beautiful base. I'm going to switch to a much stiffer blending brush. And I'm going into the shade Offline, which is this, I guess it's a very dark brown, but it's almost a purple. And I'm going to put this in the outer corner. I think this is more of a satin shade, so it's still workable. It is the deepest shade in the palette. I think it's the perfect transition from a red to a blue. If it wasn't for this shade, I probably wouldn't love this palette nearly as much. Getting a bit of fallout, but that's okay, I'm not being very careful. Something else I love about these Nabla palettes, or at least this one, is that there are lots of different textures in it. You have your classic mattes, but you also have these satin types of shades that you can use anywhere. And then you have these different kinds of sparkle. I just think they really know what they're doing. I'm just going back with my previous brush to make sure this is all blended. Now I'm going to take my finger. I'm never sure which blue I want to use. They're very different. They're both sort of the same tone, but this one is a lot more sparkly and this one is a lot more smooth and metallic. I think I'm going to use Mirabilia, which is the more smooth one. And then I'm just going to add the other one on top. This one looks really nice and sparkly as well. I hope the lighting is okay. The weather or the sun outside is failing me. That's a beautiful base, and then I'm going to add a little bit of Rem on top of it to make it even more sparkly. Nice, right? I'm just going to take this flat shader brush and I'm going into Mirabilia and adding that right there where there wasn't anything yet. Now there's only one shade I can really use as an inner corner shade, which is this one, which is called Lucid Dream. And it looks very white in the pan, but it's actually a gold. But I think it looks nice with the other colors. Just going to make sure it's blended into the other shades. So this is what the eyeshadows look like. And I have done other looks with this palette, but this is kind of my favorite go-to look with this palette. For eyeliner, I'm going to use my Chanel eyeliner from the fall collection of 2020. This is in the shade Romance. And it's this beautiful reddish tone, which I think will complement the outer color beautifully. And for tight lining, I'm going into my Charlotte Tilbury dual-ended eyeliner. This is not really neglected, but I need something. And then for mascara, we're going into something that I had to repurchase. This is the Catrice Lift Up Mascara, the waterproof version. This was my favorite mascara in the beginning of last year, like the first 3-4 months. And then I just didn't repurchase it again because I had a different mascara. We're going to see if I love it still as much as I did then. Honestly, not bad, but my first impression is not nearly as good as it was a year ago. Ah yeah, I do remember it being very good for the lower lashes. Just remember it being a little bit more voluminous on the top lashes, but maybe my lashes are just having a bad day. Just going to layer up. Yeah, I think that does look pretty good. What do you think? I guess I'm slightly disappointed. I remember this being so voluminous that I actually had too much product, almost. But now I need 2 coats and the volume is a little bit less. But I still think it looks beautiful on the lower lashes. So that's it for the eyes. Now usually I would do my eyebrows first, but I can't because I can't use my brow freeze. But I'm not going to pout any longer, we're just going into primer. One that I really honestly forgot about because it has a separate location in my makeup shelf is this Tony Moly primer. This is the Egg Pore Silky Smooth Balm. And this was honestly my favorite for a long time. Should have never put it in a special place, but the packaging is just so cute. This smells like lemon biscuits. And ever since I tried this the first time, I did use a lot more foundation. A lot more types of foundation. And I paired them with all kinds of different primers. So I think I know a lot better now than a year ago what this primer actually does. Because it's not as smoothing as the YSL Blur Primer, but it is pore filling a lot better. So I think this is the perfect primer for slightly dewy foundations that you want to make last a little bit longer and look a little bit more smooth for a longer period of time. Whereas the YSL Blur Primer I mainly use to spread out my foundations better. For foundation, we're going into my Dior Forever Natural Nude foundation. I do use this every once in a while, but for a little while I was going very hard with this one. I have mine in the shade 1 Neutral. This is honestly one of my best wearing foundations that I have. Because in my wear test I realized that it got pretty glowy after about 10 hours. But it never faded, and I did test it out again a couple of weeks ago. I did a very long wear test on a little bit more of an energetic day. And I did notice that even though it got very glowy, it didn't get broken up or ugly or feel uncomfortable. It felt very comfortable all day. So I sort of rediscovered my love for this foundation. Even though it is supposed to be more light, I think it covers pretty well. And I think it looks really smooth and natural. Now for concealer, I think it's appropriate to go back into my Pat McGrath Labs. Because this was my favorite concealer and I still really like it, but I hardly use it anymore because I got some new concealers over the last couple of months and they've been sitting in my everyday bag, and this one has been sitting in my box on my desk. And now that I know a little bit more about stopping creasing and stuff like that, I really want to try this one again. So what I do these days is that I let this sit for as long as possible and do my contour or brows or whatever first. And then I take my sponge and after that I also tap the edges with my finger. And I think that really helps with the creasing over time. And I also think it helps with the edges. And I think if you spread it out too soon, it just smears everywhere and it looks a little bit patchy, I think. But I haven't tried that new technique with this concealer yet. So I have been talking for a little bit now. But that's okay, we're going to do our brows. I'm going to use a traditional brow pencil again. This is one by L'Oreal, it's really old. It's in the shade Blonde, but it works very well for my brows. I guess I would prefer a taupe or something a little bit more grey and dark these days. But this pencil works for me. I guess I never really do my brows like this anymore. I'm going to add a brow gel later, but I think it's time to blend out the concealer. So I'm taking my sponge. Ah, yes. Gorgeous. This concealer is really pretty. And And I think letting it sit for as long as I did was the ultimate hack for making it look even smoother. So that's all I do with the sponge, and then I take my finger and if you don't let it sit for a little while, this really becomes very difficult to do this with your finger. Yes, I think that's beautiful. I hope it creases a little bit less now that I'm using this technique. I'm just going straight into powder. I'm not going to use any cream products because I use those a lot lately. So I'm going to use my Givenchy powder. This is in the shade Voile Rosé. And I guess I don't really use this a lot because it's a loose powder. And I find those to be a little bit messy and a little bit annoying sometimes. But this is how it comes out. You have these 4 colors. You have to mix them together. And this powder is brightening on most people, but not really on my skin. It just gives a slight pink tint, which is a little bit brightening, but not really. And I think a mistake with this powder is using too much, which is also why I shied away a little bit from it. But used sparingly, I think it looks really nice. I definitely see a little bit of radiance underneath my eyes. It doesn't look completely dry. See, I discovered something great. Maybe I should give this powder a spot in my everyday makeup routine again. Alright, for the rest of my face products, I picked out a face palette that I always neglect. Because it's a little bit bulky and for some reason it doesn't grab my attention as much as it used to. So this is the Benefit Cheek Stars Reunion Tour palette. I think this was the palette of 2019 or 2020. I'm not sure, I think it was 2020. This has all the classic shades. So it has a Hoola bronzer, a cookie highlighter, which I both love, but I have another Benefit palette that has a Hoola and I use that one more for some reason. And then it has these 3 blushes that are really pretty. And I think they'll match the eyeshadow very well. This Hoola is a little bit deep for some reason, and I don't think it's a Hoola caramel, but on me it's sort of more orangey than the other Hoola. You can check out my review of that Benefit Fire Queen palette if you want to know more. So I'm taking my brush and I'm going into Hoola. I guess it's okay. I thought it was going to be like way too deep, but it's workable. I guess the Hoola bronzer is not the best bronzer to use on slightly damp foundation. I feel like it's patching a little bit. As you can see, I'm not sure if it's the lighting, but I definitely see more in the middle here and then it blends out ugly into my hairline. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of this. I'm going to take my powder brush and see if I can fix the edges. Yeah, that definitely helps. Yeah, this is not my favorite bronzer. It's not ruined. It does look a little bit better in real life than on camera. I think because my lighting is so poor right now, you really see a stark contrast. For blush, I'm going to use the shade Georgia because I use that the least. I pretty much always use Sugar Bomb. This should be a nice glowy blush. Yeah, that is nice. It's not too pigmented. And then finally, I'm also going to use the cookie highlighter. I still think this is really nice. It's pretty blinding, but it does look pretty smooth. Yeah, I I think that looks nice. It's just that Hoola bronzer that I don't really like. It just looks a little bit patchy. Alright, we're finishing up with a lip product that I definitely neglected a little bit ever since I got it. This is the Uden's Eye cream lipstick in the shade S103 Brown Rose. And I think this is such a beautiful shade. For some reason I never think about using it. I hope it matches the look. I remember it being a little bit more brown, but let's give it a try. Yeah, it's pretty intense, but it may just work. I got this in my mystery box that I bought in May, and I think this is more of a fall winter color. Yeah, I think that's really pretty. Alright, that's it for my finished look. I definitely found some gems that I forgot about, and also some things... Oh wait, I forgot my brow gel. This is the NYX Control Freak. I did use this all the time when I just got it, but it's really not that good. It only gives a little bit of hold. But let's just put it in for fun. Alright, now we're all done. Let me know what you think of this look. Let me know if you like these products or if you also have some reservations about them. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.